So much to talk about. A lot of the folks out there certainly interested in the military. Many of us are watching the Ukraine very closely and what's happening over there. I had an actress, well-known actress on, Oksana Lada. She's been on the program a couple of times. She actually played Tony Soprano's girlfriend in the hit TV series The Sopranos. And a lot of interesting stories from her. She lives in New York, but she's got mom and dad over there, and she's got family over there. She's lost some cousins that were killed in some of the bombing raids and so on. So to hear a first-hand acknowledgement of what's happening over there. So now it seems, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, that we are considering the selling of the Patriot missile defense system giving to the Ukrainians the Patriot defense system. We developed that in this country. You can give us some more information on that. And Putin basically says, well, if you do that, NATO is in fair game right now, that he's not tolerating this. This is a guy that's bombing the heck out of an innocent country, and he wants to dictate the terms on how they can defend themselves. My understanding is that Patriot defense system is damn good. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it has been historically with military using this in the Middle East. The Patriot's very effective. It's something that right now would be critical for Ukraine's defenses because, as we know, they're being terrorized with missiles and Iranian-made drones every single day. This Patriot missile defense system would be able to, reduce significantly the number of successful strikes that Russia would have against Ukraine, and they're striking them in key areas throughout the country. And as we've discussed, Tom, it's really important now because what they're doing is they're targeting their energy sources and their power stations. And as we go into what's going to be a very long, cold winter in Ukraine, that's critical. They want to leave them without power. Ukraine's in a constant race, a battle right now to try and get these power stations back working, keep people with energy and heat as soon as they can. And Russia's constantly targeting new sites. So it's a challenge. This Patriot missile system would be able to help them counter that significantly. And like you said, it's so crazy right now that we've gotten to a point where Putin's like, he's invaded this country. He's committed numerous war crimes over the last it's going to be going on a year soon. But he's completely says it's outrageous that if we were to provide this system, which is clearly a defensive system, not an offensive system, that he says that's like one step too far, So, and another note, Tom, what we're seeing right now, just most recently, is that Vladimir Putin skipped his annual press conference. There's a lot of speculation about that, too. Possible issues with his country internally and pressures that he has. And also, again, they're revisiting possible health issues that he might have.
Do you think there still is the coming storm with them in terms of beyond the current conflict between Russia and the Ukraine? It's a lot of times we become complacent as of right now. This thing started in February. It dominated the news 3, 4, 5 weeks, and it kind of died out a little bit. That's what I spoke about with actress Oksana Lada, because I brought her back on because she said the people there are still suffering. Yes, what you just said is fully evident with her family losing electricity. It gets cold over there. You think we have cold winters on Long Island. They're very, very cold in the major cities over there in the Ukraine. So when one considers it, there could still be. It's not. I know we're complacent right now, but some of his dialogue and rhetoric is downright scary. Of course, I'm talking about Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, what the threats that he's made for someone in for someone in charge of such a large country with such an effective military, for him to be, comparatively speaking, for him to be making threats, and he's been making threats for the better part of a year now, about using tactical nuclear device and his strategy of escalate to de-escalate. It's part of their doctrine. It's something it's amazing to me that it's almost become white noise in America with the constant internal fighting that we have, the constant domestic squabbles that we've been experiencing for the last several years, that people don't even rank it as a top issue right now. That it's not just about Ukraine, and that's kind of how people have categorized this in their minds, I think, is that this is a Russia-Ukraine issue, but it's so much bigger than that. Not only regionally in Europe, where it's having a drastic effect, a huge impact, but also these are threats that could impact. We have somebody with the ability to launch nuclear attacks and make those threats. So I think it's something that we need to bring up. We need to reprioritize our issues here in America and consider this a legitimate threat, someone who could be unstable and reckless because of his situation, even domestically within his own country, something we need to pay a lot of attention to right now.
Again, what about weighing into the whole it seems like we have political division in this country on every issue that you could possibly imagine. And the amount of money that the American taxpayer has spent for the help to the Ukraine, it seems like we're more than our fair share from the NATO countries, that we seem to be bearing the responsibility. And it's not just Joe Biden giving money out. It's the American people that are paying for this. Monies that could be used elsewhere. Again, I support the Ukraine. I support democracy. I support freedom around the world. But at the same time, is the United States have to bear what seems to me almost 80% of the responsibility in aiding the Ukraine. Do you think there's a fair argument to that? And you just weigh in on that. I'm not asking you to take a position on it, but we're spending a heck of a lot of money over there ourselves.
Right. Yeah. So I would say two things. The first thing is, yes, I think not just now since this conflict has emerged, I think that the EU and I think that other NATO countries, it's been an ongoing problem for decades that they don't pay their fair share, comparatively speaking, with the United States. And we saw President Trump address this. He says they need to. There's a mandate where they're supposed to spend a certain percentage of their GDP on military, and they don't. They simply don't. Now, through pressure, he was able to get them to spend more. But it's a problem we're always dealing with. And let's be honest, although this is definitely a global issue and something we need to be concerned about, the EU and NATO, other NATO countries within Europe, they should be even more concerned. And you'd think that they'd want to be investing far more heavily to try and combat Russia and their advance into Ukraine right now. Now, another thing I would say is, yes, we've spent so much money in other countries too. We have to think about it in selfish terms. And it's not just us giving money to Ukraine to defend themselves. We're defending all the European members of NATO and the U.S., we are not willing to get involved in direct military conflict in Russia as of yet. That's what we've said since the very beginning. Ukraine wasn't a NATO country, so we didn't get directly involved. However, this is for selfish reasons we need to be given. They're the ones doing the fighting against Russia right now. We cannot allow Russia to be successful, no matter what. We cannot let them defeat Ukraine. We can't let them take that strategic area, that part of Europe, which already they've had the the largest nuclear power plant. There's already been key advances they've made. We have to think of it in selfish terms. This is to protect the American people and the rest of Europe and the world, not just Ukraine. So when we invest in this, that's the terms we need to, when we need to assess this, that's how we have to think about it, Tom. Not just we're giving more and more money to Ukraine. We're paying because they're fighting our enemy. And that's how it has to be looked at, unfortunately.
Yeah, again, we always stand for the beacon of hope, which probably brings us up to the southern border. Because we are such a great country and a great people, everybody wants to come here. We're seeing these caravans. I saw a video over the weekend of 20 buses. I don't know who paid for the buses, all filled with migrants and being escorted by Mexican police to our southern border. The folks got out of the car, out of the buses, a lot of them over there in the El Paso, Texas area. They walked across the Rio Grande River, and they were given their asylum papers and then released into the communities of El Paso and so on. People are getting very upset about this. Now, one of the congressmen over there said that the amount of people that crossed just into the little community of El Paso was 2,500 Sunday afternoon. And now we're anticipating what's going to happen with the expiration of Title 42, which I think is coming at the end of the week, Ken. It's like this story doesn't go away. It's like Groundhog's Day all over again. Every day we keep talking about this, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. There is no public policy initiatives, and if 42 expires, which it is, the courts have ruled that it will, more and more people are going to be coming in, and the Border Patrol is dumping them off in these towns because they don't know what else to do with them. How could we be so stupid?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that they don't understand the risk and the threat, and that this is a crisis. This is a political. This is their intention. One party in our country wants this to be an open border right now. They'll deny it's a crisis. They'll deny it's an open border. The numbers don't say otherwise, obviously. Right now, Tom, and since fiscal year 2023, which is since October, we have 485,000 land border encounters. That's up. That's a record, and it's up significantly. 2022, we had 164,000 in that same period, and in 21, only 71,000. It's getting worse every single day. And now, like you say, the Title 42 policy is set to end in a few days. And if that's not bad enough, we have senators and members of Congress talking about amnesty. Of course there's going to be a surge. When these people hear that there's a potential for amnesty, it just encourages them to come in larger numbers and get into our country as quickly as possible. And when asked this administration what they'll do with Title 42 ending, they said, well, we'll have expedited removal and increased punishments for illegal crossings, or we'll put additional resources. Very vague, whatever that means. And we all know that they have done nothing so far to try and stem the flood coming across our border of illegal immigrants. It's something that needs to be addressed immediately right now, and unfortunately, it's not.
They're doing nothing to discourage individuals from coming here. Many of them are good people. We know that. And, again, as Americans, we recognize that we live in the greatest country in the world. And I've always said 38% of the world's population lives in abject poverty and misery. And so they want to come here and, of course, start a better life, even at minimum wage, guest worker programs and so on. But none of this is there. The Biden administration canceled every safeguard against an over influx of people coming in that the Trump administration put out there, and yet they had not offered any sort of an alternative. So this is frustrating. Is this the same dialogue that we've been having for the last 2 years? Yes, absolutely. But it's going to get to a point, and it's coming very soon, that it's going to reach its boiling point. And I think we as Americans, we are seeing it here on Long Island. This isn't an issue that affects the folks in Texas and Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California. It's affecting us here on Long Island. We can clearly see it. Many of the people talking about over the summer, people camped out in the big estates over there in Amagansett and East Hampton, the people that were working the yards and so on that didn't have any sort of legal status, that make it to the more wealthy areas of the United States in order to work for a lot of these people. So this is something that when we consider it, talk about incompetence, and I don't know how else to say it, or there's a political agenda here that many of us, it's escaping us. In addition to that, Biden's CDC, and this is what's got to me, and I said it during our first segment, they're saying that the influx of 18 or 19,000 people a day doesn't affect the COVID. Yet we're saying that our hospitals are now 80% full with COVID and the various viruses that are out there, including the new flu strain and so on. But yet, when you have 18,000 people crossing a river coming into the United States, that does not increase the number of COVID cases. How stupid do they think we are? And why is the CDC now taking a political point of view?
Yeah, I was listening to your segment prior to coming on, and I totally agree with you. I mean, we've all seen it over the last several years with COVID policies where they call events with a couple hundred people, super spreader events. And now they have people flooding across the border, no idea if these people have been vaccinated or not, and no requirement to do so. And that's not alarming. That's not alarming. We're talking millions of people this year coming into the country. And for some reason, that is not a risk as far as COVID policy goes. And, this is obviously, I think, there's political intent behind this to let so many people to literally open up the border. Tom, this is not a spending issue. It's not a matter of spending more money down on the border. It's a policy issue. If they were simply to reinstate the policies we had 2 years ago, then within a couple of months, that flow across the border would be stemmed, and we'd be back where we were with the security we need at the border. That's the concern. And, what you mentioned before is so true. Yes, we do need immigrants. I'm a big believer in that. I've always thought, in prior to this most recent crisis, that some Republican politicians, especially political candidates, they could have served themselves well to say, I'm going to double the amount of people that we let across that border than the current administration, a Democratic administration, is doing. There's only one hitch. We have to let them in. Nobody comes in on their own. I'll let in twice as many, but we have to know who's coming in this country. This is a security risk. That's what this is. It's a national security risk. Fentanyl, the largest killer of our young people in this country. We have terrorists more than ever before, people on the terror watch list crossing at a time right now when we just saw, we saw the revisiting of the Lockerbie terrorist attack. That should be a reminder to people. The threats that we face out there every single day, and that border is porous, completely open right now, and it's creating a tremendous risk to the American people. I think it's probably should be our top priority right now in America.
And we're seeing indications of that in our suburban communities here in Suffolk County. We are seeing indications. Folks are calling in and expressing concerns about what they're witnessing because of an influx. It seems like coming into New York City, Long Island is really the bedroom communities of that. And I have the exact quote from the CDC. And it said, quote, I'm going to quote them, "Asylum immigrants are not a source of COVID." How do you react to that? And we got about a minute or so left. But when you hear something like that, Ken, your blood has to boil after what we've been through with the masks and the booster shots and everything else that this country went through.
It's true, Tom, and I'll make it quick. But it seems every element of our government has been politicized. And it used to not be that way. There were certain things that were beyond politics, and that happened in our Justice Department, our Defense Department, and the organizations like the CDC. Now everything is impacted by partisan politics, and I think it's a huge threat to our country. That's something that needs to be addressed in a bipartisan fashion, that certain things need to remain apolitical and cannot be impacted by partisan politics like we've seen.
Exactly. Once again, Ken Bombace, one of our regular contributors on our program. In fact, if you like Ken so much, a week from today during the 7:30 hour during LI in the AM, Ken Bombace will be on. I'll be sitting in for Jay Oliver, so you get to hear both of us in the morning at the 7:30 hour. The show begins at 6 a.m., as you all know, LI in the AM. Once again, thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we get back, let's talk to Rich Chris.